hello all. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Conchita Hernandez. I'm the Maryland State Blind and Low Vision Specialist. Today's session is part of an expanded core curriculum series that the Maryland School for the Blind Outreach Department is hosting. I will post the link in the chat box to other of our series. All of our webinars are recorded and posted to our YouTube page unless we otherwise indicate. You can subscribe to our YouTube page, and I will also post the link in the comments. You can post your questions in the chat box, and Jackie can answer them either during her session or at the end. So thank you guys again for joining us. And before we get started, I'm just going to do a quick poll to get some information on our attendees. So if you cannot, for some reason, answer the poll, you can go ahead and put your answers in the chat box. So the first question is, where are you joining us from today? Are you from Maryland, East Coast outside of Maryland, Midwest, Northeast, South, West, or international? The next question is, how did you hear about this webinar? Did you hear of it through our newsletter, social media, friend, colleague, our steering committee, or other? And what is your role? Are you a TVI, O&M instructor, service provider, parent, family member, administrator, or other? Let me give you just a little more to answer. Perfect. So it looks like we have people from Maryland and the South, so that's great. And people heard about it through our newsletter and social media. And we have TVIs on this session. So awesome, welcome. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our awesome presenter, Jackie Anderson. Jackie, oh, go ahead,
Yes.
Jackie.
Okay. I'm making sure that I was unmuted. Hello, everyone. It is a pleasure to be with you this afternoon. I'm hoping that I'm coming through clearly. These Zoom presentation always seems like you're talking out in the air. But again, thank you. I want to first say thank you to Conchita and the outreach department from the Maryland School for the Blind for giving me this opportunity to share with each of you this afternoon. A little bit of background about myself. I am a certified teacher for blind and low vision students. I'm currently working as a consultant for school districts, families, and remarkably enough, now had two different opportunities to work with the health system, doing some professional development for two doctors' office. So now I can add that to my repertoire. Background information about me. I grew up in Jamaica. I've been blind since birth. I've had progressive vision loss since birth. Let's see. I've had experience in both mainstream education as well as specialized school for the blind. My background educationally has been in the teaching profession. I have a bachelor's of art in early childhood education, as well as a master's of education in special education, teaching blind and blind students. I have begun working on my doctoral program in inclusive education. I guess you could say my proudest accomplishment is that I have been the mother of 5 children, 4 of which have received services at some point through special education services. One of them is blind, and she just actually went off to college last week. So what I'm sharing with you today, I share this information with you because what I have to share with you today, I've had the experience personally. I've had the opportunity to teach other students, as well as raising my daughter who is blind. Okay. So an icebreaker. I'm gonna ask if anyone would like to share what their favorite or unique kitchen tool. I'm gonna take a couple minutes for individual to unmute themselves, or you can put it in a chat box. Conchita, if you can man the chat box for me, please, because my braille display
and since it is webinar version, they can't unmute themselves.
Okay. They can
So
share in
we can
the chat box.
Check the chat box.
All right. Do we have any responses?
It says plastic cheap spatulas, 2 together.
Ooh, yes. Okay.
Fork.
Okay. Well, I will tell you, one of my favorite, I don't know if it's unique, but one of my favorite gadgets that I have is, I have this humongous, I don't know, contraption for cutting pineapples into spears. We love pineapples, and one of my least favorite chores is peeling pineapples. So a couple years ago, my daughter gave me for Christmas this, it kind of looks like, I know I've seen like the smaller version for cutting apples into slices. Giant circle, you put it over the pineapple, you go straight down, it pours it in the middle, and you get about 8 or 10 spears. And I love it. That's like my favorite gadget in the whole world right now in my kitchen. So why am I talking about kitchen gadgets? Today we are going to be talking about teaching daily living skills to students who are blind or low vision. And cooking, or being able to prepare meals, is covered under the independent daily living skills. So we're going to identify what do we mean by independent daily living skills, how do we teach it, and we'll also talk about assessments and checklists, progress monitoring for these skills. Okay, so first, what are independent daily living skills? And there are several different acronyms that are out there. You have ADL, IDL, deal with the same topic. Okay? And the definition that we're going to be working with today says that independent living skills are the tasks students need to manage their daily lives, such as housework, hygiene, and time management. And those are 3 broad areas. And we would even dare to just kind of sum it up to say that the skills that an individual need to be able to live, take care of themselves, and progress in life. There are 8 essential aspects of a full life. So each of us are born. When we have our kids, our goal is to raise them, teach them, give them the skills that ultimately they will be able to go out on their own. At least that's, I think, the majority of society. Some people actually enjoy having their kids and keeping their children at home. Me, I'm in the previous group. My goal has always been to provide my children with the skills necessary for them to live a happy, productive life. And this is no different for our students. So the 8 aspects of a full life encompasses your ability to earn your own wages, to have and establish a place to live, to be able to be engaged in the community, to be able to maneuver, travel independently to get around, to be able to take care and manage your health, to be able to participate in leisure activity, and that will be fun and talent, to be able to communicate with others. And we don't really talk about the fact that we actually want to create lifelong learners. When we teach, our goal should not be for our kids, our students, to just end with the knowledge that we impart on them, but for them to actually be able to continue to develop that knowledge and expound upon it. Okay, so these are the 8 essential aspects of a full life. And as teachers and parents and individuals working with blind and low vision students, this should be our goal for our students. These should be our goal for our students. So you notice on the side, I love quotes. And so you're going to see periodically throughout this presentation, different quotes that I've come across and kind of pertains to this topic. And so for this one, I have, your present circumstances don't determine where you can go. They merely determine where you start. Okay. And a lot of times our kids get stuck in just thinking that I'm blind. This is what it is. There is no hope. There is nothing better for me. And a lot of times parents and other individuals may have this outlook for our student. And because of this, they set them up for failure and do not dare to think about what or provide them with the skills necessary for them to, again, live that full life. So why do we need to teach these skills? So we've talked about what is independent living, daily living skills. Why do we need to teach it? The primary reason why we need to have intentional instruction in daily living skills is because students who are blind or low vision do not have that incidental opportunity to observe others performing or interacting in these skills area. For example, a child who is blind may not be able to see how their parent use a knife to cut a sandwich. They may not be able to completely observe when running a vacuum, how to make sure that all of the items on the floor are picked up. So they do not have access to these, what we would call incidental learning. So that is the primary reason why it is important that we are intentional in teaching daily living skills. Okay, go to the next slide. So the team approach. In teaching independent daily living skills, there needs to be a team approach in addressing these skills. Most often, parents understand what is needed in general for a child to, again, have that full life. But they lack the knowledge of how to teach a child who is blind. Most often, because blindness is such a low incident occurrence, many parents, the experience of interacting with a blind person in raising their child is the first experience they have in interacting with a blind person. So they often revert back to the memories or the other observed characterization of blindness that they may have seen. This may be in their social upbringing. It may be in their spiritual upbringing, maybe what they've read in books or what they've seen in movies. And so often these are negative depiction of the skills of individuals who are blind. So again, the parents often do not have the know-how of how to teach and how to be intentional in teaching their child who is blind. But in saying this, we recognize the importance of the parents being a part of this team. As teachers, we have a short amount of time that is allotted to us for instruction. And so often, these skills are the ones that are often pushed to the side or put at the bottom of the list. So it is important that we empower our parents in assisting and teaching these skills. There are several different checklists that are out there that list skills based on ages and stages. And just, there are numerous checklists out there. I have a couple that I use depending on the child and depending on who I'm sharing that list with, the complexity of the list. These are great tools for us to share with our parents so that parents can understand what is it that I'm supposed to be expecting of this child? What should they be able to do, or what should I be preparing them to do? I'm going to pause here and say, so often, these skills are not addressed until when we start to look at the transitional age, when our students are in upper middle school or even high school. That is not the time that we should be worrying about Bobby being able to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, or Susie being able to manage her menstrual cycle. That at that point, I dare to say, it's not impossible, but we have created an unnecessary obstacle. These skills should be integrated as early as possible in every aspect of our students' lives. So let's talk about at school. What should that look like at school? Well, I keep going back to being able to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, or a lunch meat sandwich, preparing a sandwich, making lunch. Being able to independently open cartons. Milk cartons is one that we have empowered our aides in the cafeteria when they see our kids, and if our children raise their hand and ask for someone to open it, that they don't just automatically go and do it, but they're actually working with them in teaching that skill. And I'll take a second pause here to say, when we talk about how do we teach these skills, I think in the traditional instruction in years past, it was often said that we use hand over hand, where you would take a a student's hand and have them do it, and you would then, the instructor would then take their hand and put over it. We have since learned that that's not the best approach. That's not empowering our students in self-autonomy. That's teaching them indirectly that they are waiting on the world to act upon them. And one of the things, again, in independent daily living skills is in empowering our students to take control of their environment and be self-sufficient and being self-advocate. And so part of that is teaching them self-autonomy. So we talk about using hand underhand, where we invite the child to participate or to observe the activity or the task that we want to teach. So again, two things that's important: that the child is invited. You are not taking their hand and putting them into the activity, but they're invited. And number two, that their hand is over yours in observing. And there's so much more that they can gain in that approach versus hand over hand. Okay. And again, community-based instruction is another way in which we can teach independent daily living skills. When we talk about community-based instructions, we're talking about real life experiences. Again, we talk about making our lunches. Well, part of that is we have to get the supply necessary to prepare the lunch. So a lot of our field trip that we have done over the past is taking our students into Target, taking them to the grocery stores where they can go and learn about how do you shop for your what you need at the grocery store, using an assistant, using technology. And so these, again, are real life experiences. One of my first experience when I started teaching in Georgia, it was a common practice for our students to just go to the mall and go sit on Santa's lap at Christmas time. And when I heard about this field trip, my question was, what are they gaining from this? Why are we doing it? And so, well, they need to, go and meet Santa Claus. And, well, what are they learning? So I took that field trip and I expanded upon it. Well, we made a scavenger hunt where they had to go and find different things at the mall, not just go and sit at Santa, on Santa's lap. We had a parent come in dressed up as Santa Claus so that the students could examine the costume, because again, going and sitting, it may be a 2 to 3 minute experience, and they don't really get to feel Santa's beard, and they don't get to explore the different textures of the outfit. So we had a parent come in dressed up as Santa Claus so that the students could explore the costume. Another one that we did was, again, I don't know, something about us in Christmas time, I guess. We took the students to a Christmas tree farm. And we didn't just go and look at Christmas trees and compare the different sizes. They actually went through the process of picking out a tree, and the owners talked to them about what made a good tree. They had the opportunity to actually use a saw and cut down a tree, and then taking the tree over to shake the tree to get rid of the excess pine cones, and then wrapping the tree. This, again, a lot of sighted students, may have gone on that same trip with their family, and they're able to observe all of these different parts of the process. Our students would not have access to that. So this was intentional instruction for them to understand the process. So community-based instruction is very important. And again, I know that there's schools out there that say, taking our kids off campus, that's not a part of it. It is a part, it is a crucial part of the education package for our students. And if you're in a situation like that, where you are not able to, because of the restrictions and guidelines of your school system, I encourage you, implore you to get other members on board with that will be able to provide these activities for your students. We've have done after school programs where we have had volunteers to come in and to act as shopping buddies for our students. We have taken them to the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra and have them go backstage to explore the different instruments. So again, utilize your community, your partner, we call them here partners in education, to assist in these crucial part of the of your students' education package. Okay, moving on. So, realizing that this is a webinar, I'm going to ask if you would like to share an example of a good called ADL or IDL, independent daily living skills lesson that you have, if you've had a lesson or an activity that you are proud of that you would like to share, I'm going to give you an opportunity to share that in the chat box at this time. Now, ask you again, Conchita.
Yeah,
If there are.
There's nothing yet in the chat box.
Okay, give you guys. I understand the joys of typing in those things. So I've shared a couple with you of my favorite examples with you guys. I'm going to see if anyone has any that they would like to share, and I'm going to share another example. Again, one of the things that I believe in, it's the team approach. And during my second year, when I started teaching here in Georgia, I started a program that was called Parents Connect. And this brought parents in where we were able to do seminars with them, provide them with hands-on instruction in different aspects of the expanded core curriculum. And one of the favorite lessons that 10 years later, that one of my parents still rave about was when we taught the parents under learning shades how to spread peanut butter, and how to do spreading. And we used peanut butter, we used cream cheese, and we used just regular butter, because depending on what material you are spreading, it's going to behave differently. So it's a lot easier to spread peanut butter than it is to spread jelly. So we put them on the learning shades and have them make ants on a log where they could use peanut butter or cream cheese. We had them make toast where they spread butter. And till this day, this parent particular who participated in the first lesson still raved about how life-changing that was for her, that she had thought that she had to protect her daughter from the knives in the kitchen, and because she was so afraid of her getting hurt. And after that experience, it empowered her in working with her daughter. So those are actually some of my favorite lessons, is when I'm able to work with parents and even other teachers and professionals in the school building, in showing them that it is okay and that our children are capable of doing these skills.
Hey, Jackie, there is a response in the
Okay.
chat. It says, planning a friend's birthday celebration at school, making a shopping list, actually shopping for the items needed, making the recipe, and sharing the results with peers.
Oh, I like that one. And I will also say that some of these skills, again, can be incorporated into, if children are mainstream, again, looking at the team approach. When you work with the gen ed teacher in teaching them that our kids are capable of being independent, of self-care, they are able to transfer or to help our, provide experiences for our children outside of our lessons. So thinking about the idea that was just shared about the birthday party. How often do we have different class parties? How empowering would it be for a gen ed teacher to ask our students to help with planning that party? What would they need? How many would they need of each item? That's empowering, and that will help them to develop confidence. And I think confidence is the greatest asset that our kids can have, because that confidence will empower them to continue to be lifelong learners, to go out, to go beyond their comfort zone. Okay. Now look at my quote here. Next one. So the next slide, we talk about progress monitoring and evaluation. We are so familiar with progress monitoring and evaluation because that's the driving force of a driving part or important part of the IEP. And when we talk about independent daily living skills, to determine what you're going to teach, you want to pre-assess. And there are different ways in doing this. And primary way is doing it is through checklists and skills inventory. And checklists and skill inventories are living documents. There's so many times, I cannot tell you, that I've seen where teachers have gone through to prepare for an IEP and they have completed a skills inventory for the expanded core curriculum, which include daily living skills. They then put the checklist, the skills inventory, file it away in the child's progress folder, and don't pull it out again until the next year when it's time for IEP season. Your skills inventory should be a living document. You should be, checking in on it. The other part that is important in completing a skills inventory is that, again, understand that you are not the only person who is working with or a part of that student's life. So again, going back to that team approach, you want to interview the parent. talk with the parents about the different components of the daily living skills checklist or inventory. What is it that their child is able to do? What is it that they're not able to do? What are some goals that the parents may have for that, for their child? Again, that same discussion interview with the someone who is in the general education setting that is familiar with working with your student. In elementary school, this can be the classroom teacher. A lot of times in kindergarten, first, second grade, there might be a classroom aide. The paraprofessional, if the student has works with a paraprofessional. And again, going back to the lunchroom, asking the lunch monitors, what do they observe about our students when they are at lunch? Are they independent in opening their packages, being able to organize their food on their tray or their lunchbox? Are they able to go through the line and get their lunch? Pause, break here. Yes, our students can independently use a tray to go through the line, get their lunch, and independently carry the tray using a cane back to their table. Can they do it right off the bat? Most often not. But again, with instruction, this is a skill that is possible for most of our students. And if this is a skill that is identified as necessary for students, that again, the cafeteria aide would be a great team member in working on that skill. In our resource list at the end of this document, there are links to several sites that have some wonderful examples of skills inventory and checklists. There are a link to the Perkins School for the Blind and a link to the Michigan Department of Education Low Incidence Outreach Center webpage. And on that page, you will find actual lesson suggestions, examples of different skills inventory that can be used. And I've used their skills inventory. There is, I can't remember if I put the Texas School for the Blind. Yes, I did. Okay, I went ahead, skip ahead. Yes. So there is a link to the Texas School for the Blind. And there is, through APH, I did not put that on there, but there, what is it called? The learning, I think it's called a learning backpack. I have to go back and check and see. That goes through short lessons on different aspects for daily living skills and transitional skills. So again, we talk about pre-assessment, inventories, and checklists. And in doing this, the other important component of completing the skills inventory is the center focus, the child. Asking them what are their observation of their skills in these areas and what are their goals. Because if our students are not buying into what we are trying to teach or what we want them to learn, it makes life so much harder. So in completing these inventory, we're going to use this data to set goals. These goals can be, long-term and short-term goals. And one of the things I like to tell my students, we start with the end in mind. Ultimately, what do you want? Where do you see yourself? And again, we bring them back to that when they might be having difficulty in mastering a task. Remember, your goal is you want to travel to Alaska. Well, you got to learn how to cross the street here before you can get on a plane and go to Alaska. So set long-term as well as short-term goals and continue to monitor these goals, their progress towards these goals. Okay. Let me get back. And my quote here, setting goals is the first step into turning the invisible into the visible. Okay, do we have any questions at this time? I'm going to pull up.
There are no questions right now in the chat box, Jack.
No questions. You guys are so quiet. And this is one of the joys of the Zoom world. Okay, so going back where we talk about life skills by age, I'm going to share a couple. This is one I'm going to share some of the life skills that this list is called Life Skills by Age, and it is from oftheheart.com. And actually a parent was the one who shared this one with me. So we say by age 2 to 3, put toys away, get dressed with assistance. How often do we see our kiddos, age 10, 12, that they're still waiting for someone to get them dressed? Should not be. Okay, getting dressed, putting dirty clothes in the hamper, participating in setting the table. Yes, at age 2 or 3. This should not be addressing it at age 14. We should be fine-tuning that skill. Using a fork, spoon, and a butter knife. Carrying plates to the sink after meals, brushing teeth with assistance, wiping up spills with assistance. Going to jump over to age 4 to 5. Making bed, feeding and watering plants, or feeding pets. They should be able to state their full name, address, and phone number, be able to make an emergency call, participate in basic laundry skills. Yes, at age 4 and 5. And again, are we expecting them to go and sort the laundry and put them in? No. At this age, we're showing them, working with them, having them help with putting the clothes in the hamper, putting the clothes into the washing machine. And as they become confident and as they grow, they can then move on to doing, taking the clothes out of the dryer, and getting them into the hamper and beginning to, fold them. I will tell you, all of my children, by the time they are, I would say about 11 or 12, they're sorting their clothes and they are putting their darks in by themselves. I still don't trust them at that age with the whites. But they are responsible for doing that. And that goes for all of them. And, my daughter who is blind, yes, we have Braille labels on the washing machine and on the dryer so that she can set the temperature and the cycle independent of someone else. So again, let's see, going down to the transition age, 13 to 15. Plan and prepare a meal with several ingredients. Use the oven to broil or bake. Complete somewhat sophisticated cleaning, maintenance task, changing light bulb, cleaning the oven. Look after younger siblings and neighbors. Okay, again, pause again here. Several years ago, I had a student who was in 10th grade, and she was very much interested in babysitting. So we looked at, what do you need to know to do that? And we actually had her registered at the Y for the Red Cross babysitting class. Before she started, I went and spoke with the instructor, gave her some tidbits on how she can, be effective in including the student in the class. It was a wonderful experience. And the fact that she had this certificate put in, parents at ease to say, hey, you know what? I think you can do this. And she was able to have a little side job by the time she began 11th grade in babysitting several of her neighbors' children. That was empowering for her. So yes, our kids can have a part-time job, and yes, they can supervise young children. Again, the same age group, 13 to 15, making purchases, compare prices, tip appropriately, understanding banking concepts. Again, pause here. Many banks will offer a checking account for children when they are between the age of 13 and 15. Many of my students during 11, when they're around 11 or 12, I begin that discussion with their parents about investigating the opportunities at their bank. And whether they earn money through chores or allowance, for them to learn real life money management skills. And that's a real life experience, because if they start to do this at age 13 or 15, we're teaching them financial literacy. And this is something that is important, and we're hearing a lot.
Hey, Jackie, you're frozen.
Financial literate.
You were just frozen for like 10 seconds, Jackie, so we didn't catch the last things you said.
So we were talking about the opening a student checking account, working with your child's family around age 11, 12 to investigate their bank on what is the criteria for opening a student checking account. Often this is for, banks will do this when a student reaches the age of between 13 and 15. And this is an important skill in teaching them to develop becoming financial literacy skills. Okay, do we have any questions yet?
Nope, no questions.
Oh man, this is an easy group. All right, let me get back to my PowerPoint. And on the resource page, maybe this one, we have links to several different resources. One of the things that's on here, let me see which one it is. Oh, the first one. For the Perkins School for the Blind, they have a series of classes that you can participate in, and you can earn continuing education credits for it. And one of them is for teaching independent living skills. I have on here the Center for Independent Future. And this is an organization not necessarily specific for blind and low vision students, but it's for just students with disabilities. And their approach is the center person's approach, and incorporating all aspects of life. And that is where I began putting my they encapsulated my thought process when we go back and look at the 8 principles for full life. And this is kind of like their framework and how they work with their clients. And so they have a lot of good resources on their website. And again, we talked about the Michigan Department of Education Low Incidence Outreach Center. Again, that they have a wealth of information there. Again, it's broken down by age and stages of development. There are lessons for the different age group. There are lessons for teaching children who are blind or low vision or may have multiple disabilities. And we know that the vast majority of our students have multiple exceptionalities. And so there are lessons on the Michigan's website that addresses working with students who are blind and also have additional exceptionalities. Okay. If we don't have any other question, I learned a long time when we talk about the bumblebee. This sums up, it says, but aerodynamically, the bumblebee shouldn't be able to fly. But the bumblebee doesn't know that, so it goes on flying anyway. And this is so important for our students. A lot of times people see their exceptionality before they see them, and they automatically determine what their abilities are. And if our students are surrounded, encapsulated by individuals who believe in their abilities rather than their disabilities, the possibilities for them are endless. Okay, so if there are no further questions, I'm going to turn it back over to you, Conchita.
Thanks, Jackie. We are going to do a quick poll before we head out. And this is anonymous and won't be shared. So perfect. So the first question is, how did you find the quality of the webinar on a scale of 1 to 5? So 1 is not useful at all, 2 is okay, 3 is average, 4 is good, 5 is excellent. And the second question is, was there information from the webinar that you will use in your practice? So there's yes, no, and maybe. And as you are finishing the poll, thank you, Jackie, so much for sharing this information. I am going to send a follow-up email to everyone who attended, who has both the link to the presentation and our other webinars coming up. We have lots of webinars on the ECC for the rest of August and September. Specifically, at the end of this month, we have more on CBI with Diane Sheline. And if you're in Maryland and you sign up, you get a free sensory balance tool.